WTIC 860-522-9842. I want to talk to you about the XL Center and the idea that $40 million is going to be spent to make it old and improved, and whether that's a good idea or not, especially to do it through the process of bonding. Joining us now to talk about that is Representative Rob Sampson from Wolcott. How are you, Robert? Hope you had a great Thanksgiving.
I did, Todd, and glad to be with you as always.
So tell us about this bonding process and why it's being used to raise money to do repairs to the XL.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity anytime I can get it to rage against the machine, so to speak. And, today's events were not a surprise, Todd. I mean, this $40 million for the XL Center was built into the budget that was passed a month ago. And at the time, on the floor of the House, I said that I didn't think it was right that we were raising taxes on the residents of our state and not sending a message to get people to invest in Connecticut, to stay in Connecticut. And at the same time, we are taking money out of education, away from senior citizens, and we're using it for crazy projects like this. And the thing about this XL Center thing is that we don't even know what the plan is. If you talk to 10 different people that are in favor of it, you're going to get 10 different answers about whether or not we're going to renovate it so it makes money, or we're going to renovate it so we can sell it. There's no actual plan. There was no plan presented to the legislature before the budget, and certainly not before today's bonding meeting. And I don't know how you spend $40 million without knowing what it's for.
Is that unusual, though, in state government?
Sadly, no. It's something that happens on a far too often basis.
Yes, not that negates your point, but it's for those who are in the habit of being in the position where they can raise and squander huge amounts of money without being held to a standard after the fact. That's a pretty ideal situation. And really, if you're going to design a project and you're an experienced politician and you don't care about people, you just care about managing all the political forces that you're trying to manage, this is exactly how you want it to be done, right?
Yeah, it's a boon. And this is not just on bonding or government spending, but even corporate welfare. We're going to give $300 million, say, or $250 million to XYZ company. But what does that money represent, and where did that number come from? And when you ask, you never get a positive answer.
And how would you measure? How would you measure after the fact to determine whether you had achieved success?
Right. Well, I mean, I suppose you could probably look at some sort of return on investment down the road to see if a company's success and the tax revenue back to the state and the creation of jobs did generate something positive. But we never know those numbers up front, and not in any kind of concrete way that you could make a decision. And to me, that's the danger of having too much government anyway, because
Sure.
It is just an invitation for corruption and for people to make decisions based on everything but what's actually best for the state.
State Representative Rob Sampson is with us. He is the head of the Conservative Caucus, and thus you are hearing conservative things coming out of his mouth, which is very pleasing. Conservative, people try to make it have a dirty word, but it's really just about doing things in a rational way that is fair to taxpayers. So tell us what the bonding process is, because it seems to me that if you make budgets that are designed to spend actual dollars that are being taken in through tax collections, and you run out of money, then you can do things like bonding, which means you go and fabricate money. Is that a fair way to look at it?
Yeah, but bonding is essentially borrowing, and it's not an appropriation that happens immediately, and it's typically sold to legislators and then to the public as a way for us to make an investment towards the future. And it makes sense, of course, Todd. You have to understand it makes sense because right now we can borrow that money so cheaply that we have to do it. It would be crazy not to. That's the usual pitch that you hear. It's funny.
It's like free money. How do we not take it?
Right. It's the same pitch they used 2 years ago. Few people probably remember that the state spent $35 million on the XL Center in 2014. I guess 3 years ago, I'm sorry, to renovate the XL Center for the exact same purpose. And at the time, and you can go back and read countless newspaper articles, we were told that these updates were going to get us another 10 years minimum of life out of the XL Center. And here it is. It's 3 years later. The governor wanted $250 million. But this is just throwing good money after bad. And, to me, the problem with this more than anything else is it's just a down payment. Because once you spend this $40 million and realize that we haven't changed the situation, much like we spent $35 million a couple of years ago, they're going to be forced to spend more money. Because then they'll say, well, how could we not? We've already spent 35 and then 40. And there are a few things in this budget that are like that. The crumbling foundations issue is another one where I understand the desire to help people, but you are only asking, you're inviting a tremendous crush against the taxpayers of our state going forward. Because all
right, hang on. We can talk more about that in a moment. Rob Sampson is with us. He's a Republican state representative from Wolcott. And we are going to get a traffic and weather update and then get right back to Rob and talk more about that $40 million bonding to do improvements of some kind to the XL Center. But first, we revisit with Mike Allen in the Farmington Bank Traffic Center. Good afternoon once again, Mike.
Good afternoon, Todd. Well, the drive eastbound 84 still runs heavy as you approach exit 46 just an half mile to a mile before the exit out to the Bulkley Bridge. East of the river seems to be running all right. Westbound 84 is still slow across the Bulkley Bridge through downtown out to at least exit 44, where it gradually eases but stays heavy with that bright setting sun through West Hartford. Southbound 91 loses some speed passing Park Avenue. Stop and go just after the 291 exit down to the 84 interchange. You're a little heavy as well by exit 28 and 15 south. Northbound drive, not bad. Nothing to worry about there. Route 2 is also in pretty good shape. State police are telling us they're still working with an accident on 384 westbound between exits 4 and 3. As of a short time ago, the right and center lanes were blocked, creating delays through there. Along the shoreline, a little bit of good news. First of all, in Westport, an accident 95 northbound between exits 17 and 18 has been cleared. Quite a delay moving through there, so it'll take a while for that to clear out. In New Haven, we still have a disabled tractor trailer at 91 southbound between exits 7 and 6 with the left lane closed, according to state police in that area. Traffic and weather together on the 8th, WTIC Newstalk 1080.
Overnight, what's going on weather-wise? It's going to be cool, cold air coming in. It's not going to be beautiful and sweaty warm forever. No, 24 overnight. Tomorrow, cooler with sun and some clouds, high 45. And then Friday, some clouds in the morning. And then we'll see some sun in the afternoon with a high temperature of 48 degrees. Right now, it is a delightful 50 at WTIC. 860-522-9842. Rob Sampson is our guest. We're talking about the XL Center. And you're right, Rob. This is not a surprise because the decision to make this bonding happen for the XL Center was in the budget. But nevertheless, the budget is a process where everybody was desperate to just get a budget done, and that meant you had to suck it up and go along with things that were you might be adamantly opposed to, and this could be one of those things. So you've described a process in which nobody knows exactly what is going to be done with the $40 million. There's no plan. There's not really a game plan. As you say, is this in order to spruce it up for sale, or is it to make it something that's a keeper? And without knowing that intent, why would anybody in their right mind want to fund such a thing?
Right. And again, no public hearing, no opportunity for anyone to weigh in, no opportunity for legislators to ask questions on behalf of their constituents, who are all going to be contributing to the debt that is going to, grow over time for these type of projects.
So when a project like this is funded through bonding, when exactly does that debt have to be paid back? How far down the road is the can being kicked?
That's a darn good question. I don't know exactly.
Okay, because there's something about this that it seems to me just is a win-win. When you were talking before, and I was trying to climb into the little compartment in my brain where I store what it feels like to be a big government person, and what I saw was this only leads to good things, right? We raise money, and we get to spend it on people doing construction, which means things are being built, people have jobs, people feel loyalty to me for having made this happen, and we have a shiny object to point to and say, look at the wonderful thing we did. And by the way, in a couple of years, everyone will forget that we did it, and then we can do it again.
Right, and from what I understand, I think that they can extend this from anywhere from 3 years in interest payments to 25 years. And of course, the longer you extend it, that means you have the excuse to spend even more because your payments are only a fraction of what they would be in a shorter term loan.
But that would mean that the $40 million isn't actually $40 million.
That's correct. Oh yeah, it's going to end up costing substantially more, much like the busway project. You could go on and on with projects that the state has invested in that I think are at a tremendous loss to the citizens of our state.
Do you see a way, as a conservative who wants to see the state make some great progress in terms of spending more wisely and being more fair to taxpayers, do you see a way to get from here to there? How does it become more fair? How does state government become responsible? That we're in a moment where everybody should be absolutely filled up with the realization that the state government is non-responsive to the ideas of rational leadership and performing in such a way to take care of the needs of the people.
Yeah, you're speaking the frustration that I live every day. And I want to thank you personally for the effort that you make to educate the listeners across the state in exactly what is happening and what is required for us to have a responsible government that is responsible on its own, but responsible to the citizens and taxpayers of the state. To me, the only way we get out of this is with economic growth. That's the only way the state is going to recover, is if we actually have a growing, thriving economy. And the only way that's going to happen is if we send a message to everyone across the state. Citizens, senior citizens contemplating retiring and moving out of state, people that are considering moving or leaving their businesses or may never consider Connecticut in the first place because of the environment here. We have to convince them all that Connecticut is a viable option for them to live, retire, and run and operate a business, grow a family. Once that happens, economic growth is a real possibility. But we need to make a commitment for that, and this most recent budget was the exact opposite. No one who watched that budget process go through changed their mind from selling their house. That only reconfirmed that they should. And that's the exact opposite of what needs to happen going forward.
But Rob, I think about this and how, you're talking about turning a corner, and it's easy to get around the corner when you've got a lot of momentum. But when you're being dragged to a halt from having too much weight in the vehicle and the tires flat and a banged-up old machine that's spewing disgusting exhaust out the back, which is the state of Connecticut right now.
Right.
How do you turn that corner? How do you start saying to people, guess what? In the midst of bad times, you have to get by with less. We have to make severe cuts to budgets. We have to sacrifice in order to get the state strong again. That's a tough sell, isn't it?
Of course it is, and it gets harder and harder every budget cycle that happens. Had we started to get our fiscal house in order, started to be responsible over the last decade or so, we could maybe have started to turn the state around without a lot of pain to various, interests, seniors or, the most needy in our population, or education for towns. But today, I don't think that's an option anymore. I think you're going to see, without any question, real pain going forward. And to me, that's the only way that people are going to wake up anyway and realize that we absolutely have to make the changes necessary.
It would seem to me that a really charismatic, compelling, conservative leader would have to be the next governor who could make that pitch.
Yes, and it has to be someone that is bold enough to actually believe in our principles and try and convey them in a way to show that our way is the right way. So many people in Republican politics believe that they have to cater to the middle, and therefore they have to throw Republican American ideas of liberty and personal responsibility aside so they can accommodate voters to cross over to them. But in the process, I think you lose a ton of voters, you lose a ton of support from the right, and ultimately, if that becomes your agenda, you're not solving anything. I would much rather work hard to teach people and convince them that our way is the better way.
Yeah, especially since you don't really get people on board, it seems to me, with a deep commitment to a mission if they don't understand that it's hard and the hardness is worth it. When you tell people we have to do something difficult and we've got to come together to do it, that's a compelling message. if you say we've got to do A, B, and C to turn around, but there's no ask, you're not saying to people you need to sacrifice something, then it doesn't correlate that it's going to create a great deal of change, and I don't think people will come on board with conviction.
And you end up with the result that we have, which is an American public that is completely fed up with politicians in both parties because they do not stick to principles. They do not follow through in what that expectation of that voter was. It's one thing I try and do is to put out exactly who I am and what I believe and stick to it every way and in every opportunity that I can. And I think people like me for that.
Representative Rob Sampson, thank you so much for being here. As always on WTIC, great to talk with you.